The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Welcome back to The Sustainable Voice. This is our second episode of 2025. So it's good to have Leigh back here. Good to see you again, as always.
Woo!
And we have our esteemed guest, Jennifer, back for part 2 of our 3-part episode on carbon offsetting.
Hello, hello.
Good to see you again. Good to see you again. We can't say Happy New Year anymore because it's actually been a little while now. So I think, can we say early Happy 2026? I mean, we're still
no, don't
no.
We can't do that.
And I have
it's
to
already
say,
going by too fast.
I feel like if it is the first time you've seen somebody in the new, I feel there's no expiration. If you don't see somebody for the first time in the new year until 3 weeks in, I feel like you still get to say it. But I've read recently that really after the second week, you're supposed to stop no matter what.
Well, so for me, it actually is great because for Hindus, our New Year is a different time of the year. So for us, January 1st is just the date. So it's perfect.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I joke with people, you're Happy New Year. You're about 4 months late. Sorry, but thanks again. So good to see you again. Good to see you again, Leigh. And Jennifer, welcome back.
Thanks.
I'm glad you're here. So the last episode, we talked about carbon offsetting and defining it. Now we're going to jump into worst practices. And we're going to be jumping into this. And Leigh, you said something that I loved the last episode. You said, I've learned more, but I'm still skeptical. We're about to make that worse.
We're here to push that really far down.
I still have so many questions.
Yeah. So Jennifer, our goal is to make sure Leigh's biting her nails by the time we're done.
Oh, no. Yeah, you probably will be.
So
sorry.
I want to just recap a little bit from the last episode because we talked about the criteria, and we're going to recap that criteria for this episode before we jump in. There's 3 criteria. But I also want to make sure I restate the overlying mission of this podcast, and that is to get you to think independently. So this podcast is not about convincing you one way or another. It is not about going and telling you have to do it our way or else. It is simply asking you to stop listening to people who know less about this than you do and start actually doing your own research and start thinking for yourself. At one point as children, we were doing that. And somewhere along the line, somebody told us it wasn't okay. It is okay. There's no bigger success than thinking independently. So
agreed.
Let's jump in. And Jennifer, I'm going to have you recap everybody. Can we go over the 3 criteria for carbon offsetting? And can you explain each one in layman's terms for our listeners?
Layman's terms. Yes. Okay. Criteria 1, permanence. It has to last. If you have a forest that you're using as your offset, it can't just be cut down in 5 years. Leakage, you have to prevent leakage. So if you have a carbon offset, it can't cause someone else to emit more carbon somewhere else. And additionality, which is the hardest one. You have to prove that this carbon offset would not have reduced carbon in any other way. Like if you have a forest that is a preserve and it was going to remain a preserve, you can't sell that as a carbon offset because there's no threat to the forest. So those 3 things: permanence, leakage, additionality. Learning new words today.
There you go. I never knew permanence was a word, but here we go. And leakage, and I was like, let me call the plumber. No, that's not what we're talking about.
No, something different.
Something different. I want to ask a question to you, Jennifer, because pre-2007, and I want to say actually 2008 rather, 2007, 2008, carbon offsetting wasn't really a term. It gained popularity around 2008, right around there. Is that about right? Right around there, I think.
I wasn't an adult at the time, so I wasn't paying attention.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
That says
Wait,
so much.
you weren't an adult in 2008?
No, I wasn't. I was.
Don't worry, I'm still not an adult. Don't worry.
It's that's okay. Yeah, you don't have to be an adult to pay attention. But no,
right.
that sounds right because it seems like we needed to make money at that time because of what was going on, and they just started looking around where could we make money and settled on carbon offsets. And boy, did they make money.
Who introduced this concept? Do we know who actually is the grandaddy of grandmama of?
I don't. I'm not sure. No, and I'll
have to look for that.
Yeah,
I don't know that anybody really knows, and that's the thing. I don't know that
some dude in some boardroom was like, "I have an idea."
And our stock price is down 10%. Here we go. Let's do it.
I mean, it sounds like a marketing ploy.
Same guy who probably came up with the iPods for Apple
is.
when they were, same guy probably came up with the iPods for Apple when their laptops were failing.
Okay, y'all. It was started.
Brilliant idea.
The first carbon offset project was launched in 1989 by the World Resources Institute and Applied Energy Services.
There you go.
Okay. I wonder if that one was a good one, and we just took it and twisted it into what
Twisted
it is
it
today.
up. Because what it is today is
Guatemala.
not that.
Oh,
Yep, and
okay.
that one I actually know because that one of my teachers on conservation and sustainability, his peer, he was part of the group that actually helped create the word ecotourism. His peers were part of that institute that actually were starting this. So, and that was actually 89, 88, right around there. But it didn't really take off. And I think, Jennifer, you've nailed it. It became a public phenomenon in 2008, and just going up from there. And it became by default a way of doing things. And I remember I was at a conference and somebody had come to me and said, I asked simply, I just wanted to ask and said, so what does it mean to offset the carbons for this conference? Oh, well, we paid more for it. We're very proud of it. And that answer was in 2009. And it has never left me, because here we are all these years later, and your badge of honor is that you paid more for it. That's what makes you proud of it. And that's what led me to believe that, okay, we have perverted the actual definition of a carbon offset, what it was meant to be and what it is today. So this episode, we're going to be jumping into the worst practices, right? The three criteria. Can you say them again, Jennifer, for everybody who's listening?
Permanence, leakage, and additionality.
Right.
The offset should provide an extra reduction of carbon that would not have happened any other way. And that's the sticking point with most of them, which we'll get into.
Right. So let's talk about worst practices, because we're getting to that, right? Anything in life, right? When we think back to, we're talking about 2008, 9, when this became, pop culture, basically. What was happening in the world? It was economic collapse because of collateralized debt obligations. Worst practice. When we started looking at high inflation, there was a variety of reasons for it. Worst practice. When we start looking at price gouging, whether it's at grocery stores, whether it's online, whether it's for gas prices, there's worst practices. Same thing applies here. It is a fact of life. Worst practices exist in almost everything that we have or see or do. Whether it's a movie that's produced poorly, whether it is a car built poorly, whether it is a service that isn't provided, whatever the case may be, there are bad actors and there are just bad factors. So let's talk about worst practices. Jennifer, when we talk about worst practices, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What's the most common worst practice you see that say this, more than anything else, is the reason why carbon offsetting is as lost as it is?
Well, the one that jumps to my mind is when I'm buying a flight for going anywhere that I go, and you see the airline says offset this flight for $2, for $7, for some tiny amount of money that seems like it's too good to be true. But then if you don't click the button, you feel guilty because you're like, oh, it's just $2. Why can't I throw that at, and why can't the airline just pay for it, like Leigh, you were saying earlier? That is a worst practice. And it being $2 seeming to be too good to be true, it is. If it's that cheap, just don't check the box. It's not doing anything except putting money in some fat cat's pocket. So, which, I mean, we can go into a big place, those $2 that you were, putting in like 2021, 2022, was going to the Hudson Farm Club, which is a huge piece of land, like 4,000 acres in New Jersey. That is a private hunting club for Peter Kellogg of Kellogg cereals. He is a billionaire. His net worth is like $4.5 billion. And he bought this land for him and his buddies to go out hunting. But then he was like, how can I make more money off of this piece of land? Let me sell it as a carbon offset. So these airlines jumped all over this because it was so cheap, because the market incentivizes doing the least amount possible so that people can make the most possible. But yeah, so if you bought an offset from a variety of airlines in 2021 or 2022, that money went to this billionaire to protect his land that was never in any danger. This is where the additionality part comes in, because you have to make sure that the offset is actually doing something to help that if it was in danger in the first place. So if there was a forest that was in danger of, a timber company coming in and clear cutting, that was an old growth forest, that might be something to talk about. But this man was never he's not going to sell this piece of land in his lifetime. He has to have his little retreat. And I don't want to get too much soapboxy into,
preach,
but
preach.
There's nothing, this forest was not in any danger. And so he was just making money off of people checking a box to feel good.
Do you know he came up in a conversation? I was in the last episode I was talking about. I have a lot of experience with mangroves, with planting red mangroves, and a lot of these are mangroves these are estuaries that are in danger because of erosion. Right, mangrove seedlings wash away, and then it causes it's all sorts of bad things happen, from fishermen that can no longer function properly, to water systems that are clogged, to animals that are not able to survive, to ecosystems that are collapsing, all because of erosion within the mangroves, right? So to your point, the Hudson Valley Farm came up in this conversation, and it came up in the remote part of South America that we were talking about this, and it was just, I didn't know that the person actually even knew who this was, right? And if any of you are eating Frosted Flakes right now, or eating something, they're yummy. We're not asking you to boycott Kellogg cereals. What we're simply asking you to do is understand where it's going. And I want to take it a step further. Those same airlines that signed these ridiculous contracts with workers in different places, completely upside down for a variety of reasons, right? And the union contracts are a whole separate thing altogether. So a variety of reasons that they signed these contracts. They will then file bankruptcy, these airlines, to simply null and void those contracts. Not because they're out of money. There's one particular airline that was sitting on $4 billion in cash and was still allowed to file for bankruptcy simply to make those contracts null and void so they can make their employees take a pay cut. But that employee was offsetting their carbon.
Broken.
Right. But that airline was offsetting their carbon, so they're doing good work.
They're good for the planet.
Right. They're great for the planet.
And in reality, they could be emitting more carbon than they would have, because they can just throw the money that they have sitting in their accounts. They can just throw it to solve the problem and then emit more than they would have if carbon credits weren't an option.
Another airline, and this is actually what you're talking about. And Leigh, I told you, we're going to make your skepticism get even worse.
I'm sitting here Googling all this behind the scenes, and my blood's boiling. So
there it is.
You're going to get angrier.
You're going to get angry. Worse. It gets worse. Another airline, what's offsetting carbons, is using planes that are 40 years old. So fuselage that is not as aerodynamic as it could be. Engines that are rebuilt, that are still cutting a ton of emission, right? They are still putting out a ton of emission. And do you know that same airline, and it's just starting to change now, with their flight attendants, their pay clock doesn't start until the door closes. So if the flight is delayed by 2 hours, they're working for free for those 2 hours. But they're good for the environment.
Call them out. Who is it?
American Airlines.
Oh, American.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you not have guessed?
Yeah. Could you not?
There was going to be one that was the worst.
It is incredible. And they talk about, they're making things better now. No, they're not.
No, they're not. They're just finding ways to greenwash to make you think that they're making things better.
And look, there's a systemic issue, obviously, first at play, right? There's a systemic issue that's first at play. And you have to look at even, let's say, Virgin Atlantic, right, with Richard Branson at the helm, in terms of the fact that they talk about carbon. They were the first ones to talk about carbon offsets, but they also are not transparent in what that actually means, right? If the guy who is the face of what this is supposed to look like, not in all circles, but in some circles, is talking about this, there's a problem. There's a serious issue, right? We're going to get into solutions in the third episode, in the third part of this, and we're going to be talking about solutions, and it's not going to be what you'd expect it to be, because they are solutions, but it's not in this direction. What's another worst practice?
Our good old friend JP Morgan and Chase, they had a big part of their carbon offsets in the early 20s was to save Hawk Mountain Preserve. So they invested in a company that protected this area. And I don't know if you've caught the sticking point yet, but it's Hawk Mountain Preserve. It's in Pennsylvania. The state of Pennsylvania has been preserving it since the 30s. There was never in any danger of anything happening to this piece of land because it was protected by the state government. And yet part of their carbon offset initiative, this JP Morgan and Chase decided to invest in this particular scheme, I'm going to call it, because there's nothing that's being done in a positive way with it.
And in line with JP Morgan, did you see the news that just came out that a lot of these banks, Bank of America, JP, Wells, they've all dropped out of the net zero pledge. They've all dropped out of the ESG pledge they made to the United Nations.
What? Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Leigh. Go ahead.
How is a company like JP Morgan Chase or any other bank, what are they, how are they generating carbon? Like, what are we talking about here? Just like their office buildings, their computers, like
you have asked the $1 million question.
Did they need to do it in the first place? Like, what were
there? You go.
Is it their executives flying around? What is it?
It's that kind of what we touched on in the first episode. It's an accumulation of all of their practices emit carbon, and the amount of electronic transfers that goes on. I don't know if people know this, but computers emit a lot of carbon, and when there's a lot of data being processed, there is a hub somewhere where it is sucking energy and basically emitting carbon depending on where they get their energy. Okay. So they do emit a lot. And they're just enormous companies, and so there's a lot of facets to it. So
yeah, okay,
yes,
and Leigh, you've asked the right question. That's exactly right. I mean, every company has an offset, and they've all dropped out. And of course, we see it, and you're disappointed, going, "Why did you drop out? What you have the ability to actually make this an issue?" But then you have to step back and say, "Is it the bank's fault or the system's fault? Which came first, the chicken or the egg?"
Good question.
Right? Was this defined as well as it could have been when the pledge was first created, when the 2050 net zero pledge was first created? Was it created, or was it a pipe dream? Is it politics proof? Clearly not.
No.
Because you think about the examples. So to all of our listeners, think about the two examples that Jennifer just talked about, the airlines and now with banks, with JP specifically on the banks, okay? Before you go to JP and say, "Give me all my money back, I'm going to go to Wells Fargo," just know they're just guilty.
They're all bad, yeah.
They're all bad.
Because it's like the system is broken.
The systems, we're back to the whole clean diesel thing in Europe, right? I mean, they're all bad. There's no such thing. So let's actually think about this for a second. What's the common thread between both? The airlines were supposedly offsetting on a farm that didn't need offsetting. The banks were supposedly offsetting in a farm that didn't need offsetting. Were they caving to political pressure? Was it public opinion? This goes back to what I said the first episode and what I said earlier in this episode, what I said a year ago, what Leigh has said before as well. It is a choice. The minute you start publicly shaming companies and saying it's no longer an option and we're going to call you out if you don't do it, this is what happens.
Yeah. They find a loophole. Right.
That's it.
Exactly.
They're not doing it because they want to. They're doing it because they have to. You go to a child, you go to anywhere in life and you make them do something they don't want to do, that they have to do, they're going to stomp their feet, turn their face upside down. They're going to do it because they have to, and they'll do a shoddy job doing it. And if you make somebody do things because you want to. So to all the people who are out on social media calling out, and I'm not talking about calling out companies, because Jennifer, you're doing it the right way. You have the facts to back it up. And basically you're saying, this is what they're doing.
And what's happening. Yeah.
Right. And what we're saying is it JP's fault or is it the system's fault? Is it Wells Fargo's fault or is it the system's fault? Is it Bank of America's fault or is it the system's fault? Is it the airline's fault or is it the system's fault? Whose fault is it? Now, certain bad practices we are calling out because of it, but whose fault is it? But I do want to call out the people who are jumping up and down on social media and basically either protesting or creating a scene and trying to destroy and defame the character or the perception of a company simply because they are not agreeing with their self-made definition of sustainability, or they're not agreeing or aligned with this notion where sustainability is no longer an option, or this mentality where they try to put forth that if we don't make a change, we're all going to be dead in the next 10 years. That's not what this is about. When you start publicly shaming like that, it's a problem. It becomes political. To the asshat we talked about in the first episode, that was saying that was making things political. This is what we're talking about. What things get political because people make it political, because they have somehow been trained like a circus toy, that they are supposed to make things political because that's the only conversation we can have. We're not allowed to have independent thought. We're supposed to basically, acquiesce to whatever politics are in play at that moment. So did the banks actually drop out because they're worried about political reprisal if they don't drop out? Did they drop out because the system has no clear definition of what its goals are beyond a net zero 2050 goal? Do they drop out because there is not a unanimous enforcement and approval of it? Do they drop out because there's no independent oversight, what Jennifer was talking about the first episode? What are the reasons?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm just, it's rhetorical.
I think there's a big, huge combination of everything you just said. I mean,
yeah, I think it is too.
Leigh, are you pissed off yet?
Is it wrong to feel a little sympathy / empathy for these big companies who are like,
no,
I always wonder if they've been sold snake oil. Like, I still wonder if we've all, but I have to say, Jennifer, when you're talking about the Hudson Valley Farm.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of, I have some rental properties and stuff. And when we were first talking about this, I was thinking, what would stop me from selling a tree on my lot and like telling
part
someone
of the scheme?
Yes. I mean, like, why can't I make some money off of this?
The answer is there's nothing stopping you. You could actually do that. There is no oversight committee there are carbon registries, which are supposed to be the checks and balances, but they're paid by the people selling the carbon offsets. So you could, and I don't want to inspire anybody, but it is that easy, unfortunately.
Wow.
Think about this for a second. If to everybody who buys an electric vehicle, right? Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, whoever, okay? Great cars, bad cars, that's not what this is about, okay? And anybody says, look, I drive an EV, and I've had this happen. I care about the environment. I drive an EV. Okay. Let's unpack from there something that Jennifer talked about in the first episode, and it applies here as well. Mining of lithium is the new slave labor. It is the new form of manipulating indigenous people everywhere from northern Chile to Indonesia to everything, nickel, lithium, whatever the case may be. We're just not hearing protests about it. They're happening.
Not yet.
Kids, one of the projects I'm involved in was trying to save kids who were being killed from mercury mining before they were 18 in the Amazon jungle because they were mining mercury for gold or for jewelry or whatever it is. That was there. Same things happen with the fact they have to mine lithium. And it takes, what did we say, Leigh? It was 1 million liters of water for 1 ton of lithium.
Yeah,
is the
ratio.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
So to Jennifer's point about leakage, you can't increase you can't increase emission somewhere else
just because you're offsetting it here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But the market incentivizes that structure. We want to sell we want to feel like we're doing the most good for the least amount of money because that's the system that we've built. And so when people take advantage of that system, we're angry.
And think about it. Why do people want to do it? Right? Why does somebody buy an EV? Because a neighbor usually has one. Why does an airline offset carbon? Because the airline's doing it. Why does a bank give into the net zero pledge like with everybody else? Because they want more deposits. Yep. You'll think better about them because they're offsetting that they have a pledge to become completely carbon free. I have a question for everybody who signed that pledge. How? None of you are B Corp certified. So how?
Mhm.
Please do explain to me
They
how.
don't have an answer.
No,
Yeah.
of course not. They
They
signed
have
the pledge.
dodging, like, no, we're helping dolphins or something random for the earth. There's no direct answer.
But that's exactly what we're talking about. Why did they sign the pledge? And I guarantee you, and Jennifer, you said this, they're not sitting in a boardroom and says, hey guys, let's sign this pledge that we know nothing about.
Right.
Let's sign this pledge to commit to something by 2050 when we're all going to be probably fired or dead.
Yeah.
In what fiduciary world is that even a good idea? But yet they're doing it.
Mm.
Let's go ahead and offset all this carbon because people will fly better, and they'll pay us $2 more or $4 more. They're already paying us $30 for luggage, but they pay us $2 more for this.
And then we do, though. Like, they do. It works. That's why they do it. So
right, they do it. So
I put it in the same category as when you buy something and you're automatically shown the tip screen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we could have a whole episode on that, but you feel so guilty. You feel like
that's the right word.
Recommended amount, and people are in line, and you're looking at you, and you're embarrassed if you don't. And
Leigh, that's the right word. That is the worst practice of all. Guilt.
Yeah.
And they're good at it.
Oh, they're so good at it. Oh, they are so good at it. Guilt. Notice how when you talk about, we hear this phrase, EVs are the future. Okay. Can you please solve how to mine lithium responsibly first? Cryptocurrencies are the future. Cool. Can we please talk about how you're going to regulate it to make sure people don't lose their livelihood over it? One word for you, Luna. Think about that for a second. Guilt. That's what is the biggest, worst practice of them all. It is the worst practice. I have never, ever believed in guilt as a business practice, and neither have either of you. And any sane person who runs a responsible business, and you hear them all talk about, oh, we care about our people and whatnot. Okay, cool. Prove it. What does that mean? Guilt. Right? That is the worst practice. You think about it, right? There's something you talked about with me, the Nature Conservancy. I have been dying to get into this with you. So, Jennifer, let's go.
All right. I mean, one of my other examples was the Nature Conservancy, which sounds like such a nice organization. They seem like they're going to be the best guys. They conserve nature, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they own a lot of land, and they kind of saw the carbon credit, carbon offset scheme going on and thought that they could make some money out of it. So one of their partners who bought some of the Nature Conservancy's land was Disney, if you can believe it. So the Nature Conservancy claimed that this piece of land was at imminent risk for commercial timber harvesting in the next 5 years. They made this claim and then sold that forest to Disney to preserve it. But the Nature Conservancy was the one who owned the land. So if it was at imminent risk, it was because they were selling it to be deforested. So that is another one where it just didn't make sense. Like, Disney is carbon neutral, or they're working towards carbon neutrality because they're saving a forest that was never in any danger in the first place. That additionality component that's another one in Pennsylvania.
It was Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
but all over, they own land all over.
I know. I in my former life, I helped a very large donor secure some land on behalf of the Nature Conservancy in the Pacific Northwest, and I just was getting ready to be.
I wonder what's going on with that land. Yeah, no, it wasn't that one, but I wonder what that piece of land is doing now.
Yeah, it's in Canada, up in Canada.
We'll have to see.
Would the word guilt apply there too?
Oh yeah.
Why would Disney do it? And actually, here's a question: do you know when Disney bought that?
I want to say the late teens. I don't know the exact date.
Like the 2016,
2017 is what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay, Leigh, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you look up Disney's stock price in 2017?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to draw a correlation right now and prove this
I like
point
it.
about guilt.
Okay. Disney also purchased land from the state of Florida and then transferred it to the Nature Conservancy.
Oh,
Okay.
well, see, there's a little cyclical thing going on there.
Yeah.
As
2017.
2017, Disney stock price 2017.
Okay. It closed at in December 1st of 2017, it closed at 107.51.
Okay. What's the price today?
Let's see.
I'm going to ask you one more question after this.
Get ready.
Yeah. Well, it's not much better, Ashish. It's 108. So
Sure.
it's
Okay.
worse.
What is the highest price Disney stock price has reached, and when was that?
I don't, the other thing I didn't look at was splits and that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
the highest closing price was in 2021 for 201.
There you go. Okay. I want you to think about this, all of our listeners. I want you to think about this. 2017 Disney stock price, which you said $72 a share, right?
No,
107, sorry,
108, something like
108.
that, yeah.
So basically half of what it was worth at its highest point. 2021 was the highest point, right? So it was at 108. Now it's right around there. I want you to watch carefully what happens in the next 24 months to see if more of these announcements come out about carbon offsets or about something to save the environment or something that's socially responsible, something that's going to paint Disney in the right eye. I want you to take a look at that. And then I want you to think about for a second the fact that Disney's employees are getting ready to unionize.
So what are you saying?
Guilt.
Guilt
to make you feel better, to give Disney your money so they can prop up their stock price.
Not that they want to do good, that
Okay.
they want to abuse the system to make you think they're doing good.
And is that because of a shareholder revolt, or is that because the system is telling them your stock price needs to go up because you're Disney? The stock price needs to go up because you have competition from X, Y, and Z. Your stock price needs to go up because otherwise your board's going to fire the CEO. Right? All these things. The airlines. So here's one more question, Leigh. You can try to help us with this. What was the first airline to carbon offset? Who was the first airline, or what was the first airline to carbon offset?
I have a guess, but I would love to know the answer.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. Do you want to guess?
Go for it. Let's have her guess.
My guess is United. Am I wrong?
No.
Who? Tell me.
Japan Airlines.
Oh, I should have thought outside the US. That's so true. Yeah, that makes sense.
And actually, JetBlue was the first U.S. airline to commit to achieve carbon neutrality for all domestic flights. Delta has marketed itself as the world's first carbon neutral airline.
Don't believe
it says
them.
EasyJet was the first major airline to offset all jet fuel emissions in 2019.
EasyJet that actually sells lottery tickets on board. Got it. that EasyJet. Okay, when did Japan Airlines offset there? When did they do it?
Let's see here. Get to that link. Um, 2012? No, wrong. I can't find it.
Okay.
Let me see. This is AI telling me this.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm going to trust it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you guys keep talking. If I find it, I'll tell you.
So, let's say she said 2012.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that if you looked at JetBlue, all the airlines, you looked at when they did it, something was happening with the stock price or with the market as a whole. Whether it was recovery from an economic collapse, recovery from something that's you isolated to them. And look, every company in the world does that, right? When business is flat or is suppressed, you're going to find some way to become the talk of the town. You're going to find something to elevate your brand. What we're talking about here is that guilt. The guilt is not the reason to elevate a brand. And that seems to be the go-to, right? Go back to Suzanne Summers on on those little commercials about how much it only costs this much to feed a child a day. And then you see who the sponsor was. Go back to Bill Cosby talking about this. Where's Bill Cosby now? I mean, let's just think about this. And he was the one doing it. He was the one. Oh, it only costs this much, and whatnot. And you have that music playing in the background. It's guilt. We're a society of guilt. It seems like that's how we are able to get things done, because I'm gonna make you feel crappy if you don't do it. Right? It's all across the board. Right? It's across the board. Forget the denomination, right? Forget the let's say this is non-denominational. Picture a church X, okay? And it doesn't matter what the religion is. It's church X. And that church, we are basically at that point, they're handing out that donation basket. Right? They're going through the pews, handing out the basket. What happens when one person doesn't put money in there? Everybody gives the look.
Yes. Oh my God. We have I can't even begin to tell you the number of times we've been to different churches where we were like scrambling, trying to find the money so we can not be embarrassed.
Yeah, you get them.
Yeah.
And then they get would you look at them?
Yeah.
Look at what they're doing.
Yeah. I know. It's so bad.
I can't believe they're not giving any
My
money.
grandma used to put it in an envelope so you wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what ends up happening? They bought a new house. They bought a new car. Look at the shoes they're wearing. Look at the clothes they're wearing. Surely they can afford this.
Yeah.
How come they can't do anything? Look, and we're all guilty. We're all guilty of it, right? We're all guilty of it. Every year, my family and I will volunteer to go here and actually give food. It's a Miracle on 10th Street. It's a really cool event. It's giving food out to people that have hit hard times, right? People that lost their jobs, that just need a helping hand over the holidays to get food and we always stop because you see a fancy German car pull up and go, what are they doing in this line? Look at the car. How come they just sell the car? How come they didn't just actually get rid of the car to pay for food? They could do this. We're a society of guilt.
Yeah.
So anybody, to all of our listeners, stop guilting yourself.
Yeah.
Stop guilting yourself or stop guilting others to make people believe your way of doing things. It can't be that. Jennifer, you missed the best part. I'm going to repeat it for you. We talked about
power went out. It's that snowstorm.
I'm telling you. Well, look, yeah. Okay, wait, here we go. Neither rain, nor sleet, nor sun, no snow. We're here. Take that, post office. We're here.
Yeah.
So we were talking about what this equates to. Non-denominational church, donation basket going through the pews.
Right.
And the person who doesn't put money in the church basket and the donation basket. Everybody goes, look at them. They didn't put money in. The whispers start.
The guilt. Yep.
The guilt. Yeah. Everybody, would you look at them? Look at the shoes they're wearing. Oh, I know her. She takes Pilates on Tuesday. She can afford those classes. Like she's not putting even $1 in here. Or her child goes to private school. All of a sudden, it gets really personal. That's what this is. That's what this is. So I was involved, and I'm going to equate this to these CEOs of companies because Leigh said something very key about sympathy for large companies. I actually do feel sympathy for some of these CEOs, and I'll explain to you what I mean, right? And I know right now, Jennifer, you're like, what? I'll explain to you what I mean. I was part of a piece, an article that was written in the New York Times, and it was talking about it was a video that went viral of a cheetah that had made a kill, and the minute the cheetah made the kill, these vehicles just came storming out of nowhere to surround this cheetah, and they were honking at each other, and the engines are clamoring. And this poor cheetah is in the middle with this kill. It cannot even move. It stopped eating and looking around. There's people with the cars pulling up closer and closer. They're honking at each other. They're obnoxious. And the video goes, look at this. Tourism is so bad. Look at what's happening. And I remember myself and two other people made the statement that I learned it from the other people, and they were right. How much pressure are those drivers in? working at lodges that are, dirt cheap, how much pressure are they under to put on a show?
Right.
That they're going to, I mean, these guys were doing 25, 30 miles an hour. If they ran over a leopard, you'd never know it. They were hauling to get to this cheetah, and they were going over bumps and going here. And I mean, in these Land Cruisers that are top heavy that could flip over on a whim if you take a turn the wrong way, and they were just flying. And this article was talking about, is it over tourism? Is it this? Is it that? And yeah, that's part of it, but it came down to guilt. Same thing with, I'm not saying all, but some of these CEOs that are being pressured to increase their stock price by $5 or by 10% because they borrowed money from hedge funds or private equity or whatever the case may be that has promised returns that they have to deliver on, otherwise they lose their job.
Right. Because of the way the system is set up.
Right. I don't care how much money you make as a CEO. You can make, and I tell people, well, they make $25 million a year. They also live a $25 million lifestyle. Which means they're flat broke if they lose their job. I guarantee you they're not saving millions in the bank. I'm not saying all, but I'm saying some. I know this because I've had experience with this, and I've seen, not that I've had that kind of money, but that I've experienced working with people like that. They don't save. Their needs increase, and everybody's your best friend. I feel sympathy for them. I still get to hold them responsible, just like you're saying, Jennifer. We hold them responsible for the decisions they're making, but we need to take a step back and say, what forced them to make that decision in the first place? Just, in what world do a group of CEOs of Fortune 500 banks that are wildly successful, that are profitable beyond anybody's means, sit around in a room and say, let's put our signature on a document that has no clear defined goals, a document that has no clear path, a document that is so far out that there's no way of knowing it's going to succeed or not, a document that we don't know how much it's going to cost us over the next however many years, a document that has no real benefit except it's going to make people feel good. Yeah, let's sign it. It's a good idea. Let's put my signature on it. Right. A document that could very well define us if this goes the wrong way. But yeah, let's sign it. It's a good idea. In what world and in what boardroom does that actually happen? These organizations that have meetings about their meetings. In what world does that actually happen? So it's the system. And it starts with the word that Leigh used, guilt. We have to stop that. So you know who I'm holding responsible right now? All those people who jump on social media, who are those people who I applaud them for being all in on sustainability, but they actually will do their best to publicly shame individuals and say, it's not an option. If you don't comply, you will be shamed. Take that phrase out of your vocabulary. Sustainability is no longer an option. It is an option, and it always will be. You cannot take away the right for people to choose what they want to do. Otherwise, what's the point? If you're forcing this down somebody's throat, then we're just as guilty as the people who aren't listening to us. Right? I mean, we have to get out of this guilt aspect of it. That's so important. I want to close on one topic here, which you've talked about this before, Jennifer, which is carbon registries. Let's talk about this. Tell me why that's a worse practice, because I agree with you.
It's back to the checks and balances. It sounds like they are the checks and balance, and that leads someone like me, maybe, who does tend to think about things. If I see, oh, there's a governing body, that sounds like a good thing. That sounds like something that, makes this credible. The problem is the governing body is being paid by the people that they're regulating. So there is no governing going on. They're just lining their pockets, because the richer they are, the richer the governing body is. So it's not good.
And why were they set up? Why were carbon registries set up?
Well, theoretically, because we were abusing the system, they were abusing the system. We were making credits that you could literally say, oh, I'm protecting this piece of land in Pennsylvania, and there could have been no piece of land.
Right.
So I guess the registries have at least, now there's a piece of land that is being protected. It just was already protected.
So back to what we were talking about with guilt. In what world do CEOs of successful companies held responsible by public boards and a share price that is on the open market, in what world do they openly agree to say, there's no checks and balances here, but I'll keep writing a blank check for this, no problem. There's no checks and balances. I have no way of knowing if this is actually being done, but here, let me give you a check. Go ahead, fill it out. The felt is zero.
And it probably isn't being done. Exactly.
It's
Why
probably
would I? Right.
Right. So the one thing that I'll say to all of our listeners, guilt. Think about that. I want you to take a step back to all of our listeners and our viewers, out of whatever mode you're listening to us on. I want you to stop listening right now. I'll give our closing lecture. Stop listening right now. Turn us off right now before you come back for the next episode. Turn us off right now. And I want you to look up the definition of the word guilt. And I want you to think about every instance in your life where somebody has guilted you into doing something you ended up not wanting to do. Whether it's buying a car you didn't want to buy, whether it's buying something you didn't want to buy, whether it's doing something you didn't want to do, whether it's tipping somebody you didn't want to tip, whatever it is, that's what's happening. That is the ultimate worst practice. We are guilting society into thinking that this is the way we save the planet, and in actuality, we're making things worse. That's why all these banks just dropped out of the net zero pledge. Because we're guilting organizations into thinking that they have to do this, because if they don't, they're going to succumb to political pressure. And if they don't, they're going to face retribution from their customers, from their shareholders, from the politicians. Where did we end up here? How did we end up here? This isn't a political thing. This is what we were saying before. We made it political. This is what happens. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into solutions, real solutions, in our next episode. And I can't wait to get that. Leigh, we're going to make you feel better. Don't worry.
Good. I'm looking forward
Yay.
to the real solutions.
Optimism.
Something that I can really do, and that I, as one person, can know that I'm making a difference. That's what I want to know.
That's exactly.
I don't think I can, I can't take on the JP Morgan Chase. I just, where I can do my small thing, I can do.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I think that's a great segue into the next episode. So I'm going to close with this for everybody. Think about this. What can you do? And what can you do without guilting other people into doing it for you? What can you do without guilt? Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.